You used to think all you had to do was push a little harder and you'd break free. Break free from the cycle, making money, paying bills, then starting from zero again the next month. But the truth is, you're stuck. Quietly, relentlessly. Every time you open your wallet and see a few crumpled bills, your chest tightens. Not because you're out of cash, but because of that helpless feeling. That sense that your whole life is being scraped away, dollar by dollar. That you're living in a trap you built with your own hands. If you've ever felt that way, then stay. Because this isn't one of those videos that'll tell you it's all going to be okay. This is the video that dares to look pain in the eye, call it by name, and walk through it through the lens of Stoicism. What you're about to hear next could change the way you see your entire life. Hit subscribe, like, and stay with me, because the final minutes will be the most important. You're living in a house that, on paper, belongs to you, but deep down you know you're just temporarily staying there. You don't own it. Every month, money drains from your account. Mortgage, property tax, insurance, electricity, water, gas, internet, trash, lawn care, snow removal. It never ends. And if you fall short one month, everything you call yours could disappear with a single click from the bank. And that's the hardest part. The feeling of losing control over things you've poured your entire life into earning. You thought you had crossed the finish line, only to realize you've just stepped into an even tighter loop. A life where you work yourself to exhaustion, not to move forward, but just to keep what you already have from slipping away. You start living with a bitter paradox, owning a home, but feeling no safety. Having a roof over your head, but no peace. Every time you come home, it doesn't feel like relief. It feels like walking into a cell. Every bill is a reminder. Don't get cocky. This house was never really yours. That feeling, most people never say it out loud, but you know it well, like a scratch in your soul, digging deeper every day, bleeding slow. In Stoicism, this feeling is the clearest sign of what they call the illusion of ownership, one of the root causes of human suffering. Epictetus once said, "We suffer not because of what happens, but because we think it shouldn't have." You think you should be at peace because you bought a house, that you should be free after all those years of hard work. But you forgot one thing. Everything on the outside, property, job, reputation, is out of your control. The only thing you truly own is your mind. Your power to choose how you see and respond to the world. And the real tragedy? You've traded that one thing, inner peace, for a fragile sense of material safety. You believed that if you had a house, assets, and all the right stuff, you'd finally be okay. But now you see the truth. You were wrong. The price of having is a constant fear of losing. You're always on edge, always afraid, always reactive, because your happiness depends on something you can't control. And the cruelest part is, that burden doesn't just sit on your shoulders. It shows up in every letter from the bank, every thicker than last month bill, every bright red notice taped to your door when you're late. It doesn't scream, it whispers, softly, steadily. And it's that quiet hum, that slow, steady pressure that's been numbing your mind every single day. It doesn't explode all at once to give you a chance to fight back. It drips, a little more each month. Every time you open the mailbox, there's another bill waiting. Electricity, water, internet, car insurance, home insurance, cable, washer payment, bed payment, sofa installment, then credit cards, then school fees for the kids, then gas, groceries, parking, doctor visits. You can't even remember the last time in a month you didn't spend money, because that day doesn't exist. And at this point, it's no longer about money, it's about your mind. It's that constant sense that something's waiting just beyond the door, lurking, silent like a predator. It doesn't roar, but it never leaves. You've lost the ability to rest. Even when you're home, the door's locked, the lights off, your body lying still in bed, your mind keeps racing through numbers. How much did I spend today? Will I make it through this month? What if I lose my job? What if the car breaks down? What if the kid gets sick? Where would I find the money? You're not living, you're just surviving inside a financial maze with no way out. Every step comes at a cost. And the worst part? You don't have the option to stop. Because the moment you do, everything starts falling apart. In Stoicism, this pain ties directly to the principle. You can't control what happens outside of you, but you can control how you respond. The bills are external events, but the panic you feel, that comes from letting them define your worth and your peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not things that disturb us, but our judgment about them." But you've forgotten that. You've let every sheet of printed paper become a knife against your spirit. You've lost the ability to focus deeply, lost your patience, lost your creativity. All your energy is spent on defense. And over time, you grow exhausted. Not the kind of tired you feel in your body, but the fatigue that lives deep inside you. The kind that comes from carrying a weight for so long, you forget you were ever allowed to set it down. You don't laugh like you used to. You don't really listen when your kids talk. You feel nothing when you look up at a clear blue sky, because all of it is drowned out by the whisper of numbers. Not paid yet, still owe. Due soon, late equals a fee. Miss it and it's cut off. Those phrases loop in your mind like a toxic mantra, day after day. And it's that rhythm, that's the cruelest part. It doesn't break you all at once. It just quietly drains your will to live, legally and in silence. But the worst pain isn't even that. The worst pain is knowing with absolute clarity that you can't go on like this, but still not knowing where to begin. And then there are those moments. You stand motionless in your own home, looking around, asking yourself, is everything I'm breaking myself to keep even worth it? But you swallow the question, turn away, and keep going, like a machine. Because if you stop for even a second, the numbers will catch up to you, and you fear them. You fear what it feels like to lose control. But wait, if you truly have no control left, then what exactly are you breaking yourself to hold on to? That's the moment when you need clarity, a new lens, a new principle to live by. Not to escape, but to look the pain in the eye, and finally choose a way of living that can pull you out of this loop before it swallows you whole. You used to believe that owning a house, having a car, and a few expensive items meant you were stable, meant you were a grown man, meant you were someone to be respected. So you started building your life on things you didn't truly own, borrowing money to live as if you already had it. Every item in your home, from the leather chair in the living room, the 65-inch TV, to the pots and pans in the kitchen, comes with a bill, a contract, an interest rate attached. You didn't buy peace of mind, you borrowed it, and the cost was your freedom. At first you told yourself, I need this. I need it so my wife and kids won't feel ashamed. I need it so people will look at me with respect. But slowly, you found yourself pulled into a race where even you didn't know what the finish line looked like. Because once you're used to living on borrowed money, you lose all sense of what enough actually means. Every time you pay off one debt, you open up another, like the whole system was designed to keep you locked in that loop forever. And truth is, it was. Credit systems, advertising campaigns, social media, all of them plant the same seed in your mind. You're lacking. You're not premium enough, not secure enough, not man enough. And instead of recognizing the manipulation, you step into the trap yourself, one choice at a time. In Stoicism, this is the classic example of chasing stability from the outside. Seneca once warned, what comes from outside can also be taken away from outside. When you define your stability by things that can be lost, you put yourself in a losing game. You don't control the economy, the job market, gas prices, or interest rates, but you're letting your peace of mind depend on all of them. So what's the result? You live in a nice house but never feel safe. You drive a fancy car, but your stomach knots every time the fuel light flashes. You live in a world that looks solid on the surface, but underneath, you're falling apart. You lose your ability to enjoy the simple things, because every small joy now has a price tag. A family dinner no longer feels like connection. It feels like another charge waiting to hit your statement. Every time you step outside, it's not because you want to, but because you have to. Because you feel the pressure to prove you can still take care of things. And then you age fast. Not in years, but in your presence. in your eyes, in the life behind your words. Because you're not really living for yourself anymore. You're just working to pay off a fake version of stability that society convinced you was real before you even noticed. And the scariest part? You might still be paying for it, right up until your last breath. They'll carve your name into a headstone, maybe even list all the things you once owned. But no one will see the true cost. The sleepless nights, the worn-out months, the years you spent trading yourself away just to keep up appearances. So the only question left is, how much longer do you want to live like that? Because maybe, just maybe, the stability you're clinging to is exactly what's dragging you under, inch by inch. This isn't just a video. This is the reminder you needed today. Hit subscribe and like if you want someone in your corner pushing you to live by your real values. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from empty rooms. It lives in crowded dinners where no one really sees you. It's in the look your wife gives when she asks, "Why haven't you paid the school fees yet?" It's in the carefree laughter of your kids, when deep down you're not even sure how much longer you can keep providing. It's in the words, "I'm fine, really," the line you've told yourself 1,000 times just to survive one more day. You're the man of the house, so you don't get the luxury of being weak. No one gives you permission to be tired. No one truly asks, "Are you okay?" They just ask, "How's this month's paycheck? Did you pay yet? When are you fixing the AC?" You slowly become a shadow. Present everywhere, handling everything, standing behind it all, but no longer existing in any moment of your own life. You stay silent, you brace yourself, you endure, because you think that's what men do. You don't complain. But it's that very silence that's killing you, piece by piece. And one day, you look around and realize you're collapsing in a battle no one even knows you're fighting. In Stoicism, this kind of pain reflects one of the deepest human struggles. The suffering that comes from living against your nature, as a social being who needs connection and understanding. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "We were born to work together, like feet, like hands, like eyelids." But you, caught in the grind of being the provider, the protector, have slowly become someone detached. You don't talk anymore, afraid to worry others. You don't complain, afraid of being seen as weak. You don't share, afraid they'll think you failed. But in doing that, you're building a cage around yourself and locking yourself in it, quietly enduring every blow. You have friends, but no one really gets you. You have family, but the distance keeps growing. You still go to work, still pay the bills, still play the role of husband and father. But you're starting to feel like a character in someone else's script. And when the day finally comes that you need someone to lean on, you realize you've played the strong role so well, no one thinks you need help. No one steps in because they assume you're still standing. That's the tragedy of men who live for duty but forget they're human too. You get tired, you need to be heard. You need a place to breathe, but you're not breathing anymore. You're just trying not to drown. And slowly, you stop feeling anything. No joy, no sadness, just emptiness. Every morning becomes a nameless fight. Every night a surrender, knowing tomorrow will be the same. And you ask, does anyone really understand me? The answer is yes. But before anyone can understand you, you have to be willing to speak, willing to stop, willing to admit that you need to be heard too. Because if you don't, you'll keep carrying it until you break. You still have money, at least enough to get by. You still have a job, though it's not something you're proud of. You're still living, in the biological sense, but something inside you feels hollow. A kind of exhaustion that doesn't show up on paper, that can't be measured in numbers, that no one else can see, but you feel it every single morning when you open your eyes. That's when you know the problem isn't financial anymore. It's mental. A mind worn down to the point where nothing excites you. You don't feel joy when eating a good meal, when payday comes, or when taking your kids out. Everything's become a task to complete, not a life to enjoy. You don't want to admit it, because admitting it feels like defeat. But it's that denial that's grinding you down more and more every day. In Stoicism, this is what happens when you can no longer tell what truly belongs to you and what doesn't. Epictetus said, "What wears us out is not events themselves, but our effort to control what's beyond us." And for years, you've tried to control everything. Your income, your bills, other people's emotions, society's expectations, your image. You've strained so hard that there's no room left in your mind to simply live for yourself. You go to work out of fear of losing the job. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You spend time with your family, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of being seen as distant. You've turned your life into a machine, operating on the false belief that this is what I'm supposed to do. And at some point, you lose all sense of what you're even doing it for. You look in the mirror and don't recognize your own eyes. The fire's gone. The life's gone. All that's left is resistance. And that's how you become the one thing you swore you'd never be, a responsible shell of a man. And then you start shutting down. Your memory fades. Your patience thins. Your body starts firing off warnings. Fatigue without cause, insomnia, headaches, loss of appetite, or eating without control. You reach for distractions, alcohol, games, social media, sex, more work. But nothing fills the void, because the void isn't in your outer life. It's buried deep inside, a hole carved out by the helplessness of going through the motions and feeling nothing. And this is where you need to stop. Not to rest, but to wake up. Wake up and realize you don't need to control everything. You only need to control one thing: how you face yourself. Have the courage to admit you're tired, the humility to accept you can't keep pushing forever, and the clarity to take a step back and ask, what's really worth carrying? And what have you been hauling around just because you were afraid to fall behind? You've spent years living like a warrior who never let himself fall. But the wise man is the one who stops before the fall breaks him. You don't have anything left to prove. What you need now is to find yourself again. Start today. Most people quit before they ever learn the biggest lesson. But if you're still watching, I know you're different. Hit subscribe, like, and let's go all the way together. This is the first truth, and the hardest pill for a man who spent his life carrying the weight to swallow. You don't control everything. You can try, you can plan every step, you can do everything by the book, and still, things will fall apart right in front of you, even when you did nothing wrong. And in that moment, you'll feel like a failure. No longer the rock, no longer the man who holds it all together. Just a tired soul trying to hold on to something that's slipping from your grasp. Stoicism doesn't reject this reality. In fact, it forces you to face it. It teaches you to name the pain for what it is. Not weakness, but the inevitable crash from the illusion of total control. Epictetus said it plainly: we suffer not from events themselves, but from the mistaken belief that they should be under our control. You think you'll keep your job if you do good work. You think you'll never struggle financially if you work hard. You think that if you provide for your family, they'll always understand, love, and support you without question. But life doesn't work by your logic. It runs on its own terms. On cycles, weather, markets, people. All things you'll never fully hold in your hands. And when you refuse to accept that, you start fighting reality. You tense up, you get angry, you blame yourself for not being good enough, fast enough, strong enough. But the truth is, you've been fighting a battle no one on this earth can win. Accepting your limits doesn't make you small. On the contrary, it's the first step toward real maturity. A strong man isn't one who controls everything. He's the one who knows when to retreat, who knows how to channel his energy where it actually makes a difference. A man who can stare chaos in the face and say, I didn't choose this, but I choose how I face it. You can't control energy prices, but you can learn to live with less. You can't stop someone from firing you, but you can decide not to let it destroy your sense of worth. You can't stop the storm, but you can build one hell of a roof. That's how Marcus Aurelius lived, through war, plague, betrayal, and crushing pressure. And if an emperor couldn't control everything, then you sure as hell don't need to punish yourself for not being able to either. Letting go of control isn't surrender. It's the first step in reclaiming real ownership of your life. Once you've had the courage to admit that you can't control everything, the next step, just as crucial, is learning how to draw a clear line, what you can take charge of and what's simply beyond your reach. It sounds simple, but failing to do this is exactly why so many men end up burned out. Not because life is too harsh, but because they've drained all their energy fighting things they were never meant to control. Stoicism calls this the dichotomy of control. A core principle. If you want peace in a chaotic world, the first thing you must learn is to sort things out. What you should act on, and what you should release. You can't control gas prices, housing costs, inflation, tax policies, layoffs, the weather, or your family's attitude when they're stressed. You can't control aging, your parents getting sick, your kids messing up, or how fast the world is changing. But you absolutely can control how you respond to those things. You can control your tone when someone lashes out. You can choose to spend more wisely when costs rise. You can adjust your lifestyle, mindset, habits, even your attitude, so you don't lose yourself in the middle of the storm. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, some things are not. Happiness lies in knowing the difference." And he was right. If you keep trying to control what isn't yours to control, you'll get sucked into a spiral of frustration and defeat. You'll always be angry that the world doesn't play by your rules. Always exhausted trying to do the impossible. Keep everything stable, safe, and on schedule. But life doesn't work like that. And once you understand that your job is to focus only on what you can actually influence, you begin to recover. You can't stop your child from getting sick, but you can prepare financially, emotionally, and mentally to be there when it happens. You can't make your wife understand you all the time, but you can act with integrity, stay consistent, and uphold your self-respect. You can't control when you get laid off, but you can upgrade your skills, build a backup plan, and shift your lifestyle to be less dependent. That's the kind of inner strength Stoicism teaches. Not the power to bend the world, but the power to stay grounded in the middle of it. Only when you learn to separate what's yours from what's not will you stop drowning in chaos. You stop bracing against the impossible. You shift all your focus to what's real, what you can actually change, your mindset, your actions, your emotions, your decisions. And little by little, you begin to feel something you may not have felt in a long time. Freedom. Not material freedom, internal freedom. The kind that comes from knowing you don't need to control it all. You just need to control yourself. And that's enough. Once you've learned to separate what's within your control from what isn't, the next step is just as vital. Train yourself in selective numbness. Don't get it twisted. This isn't about going cold or shutting down emotionally, about not giving a damn or walking through life like a corpse. No. This is a sharp, alert kind of calm. A mental discipline forged in pain and clarity, the kind that knows not everything deserves your energy. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every situation demands a reaction. And especially, not every emotion that shows up in your head is real or worth following. In a world that's getting louder by the minute, where everything begs for your attention, where your phone never stops buzzing, where social media floods your brain with hundreds of inputs a day, where bills, responsibilities, and obligations knock at your door nonstop, the skill that will keep you standing is the ability to decide what to let into your heart and what to let pass like wind. That's why Stoicism treats mental training the way athletes treat physical training. You can't expect your mind to stay strong if you let it react to everything, jump at every criticism, or spiral at every small disruption. A mind like that will burn out. It'll break down, and eventually, it won't be able to tell what actually matters. Look at Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire on the edge of collapse, betrayed by his own blood, worn down by war and plague, yet still wrote each night in his journal things like, "No need to judge, no need to react, no need to rush." He understood. A mind that loses its grip over small things can never stay calm in front of big ones. He was selective. He tuned out what he couldn't control. He didn't waste time reacting to the madness of the world. He responded only to himself. And that's how he didn't lose his mind in the middle of politics, betrayal, and death. He made it through because he knew where to place his heart and where to hold it back. Now ask yourself, how many times did you react just today to a stressful email, a passive-aggressive text, a judgmental look from a stranger, a careless word from your wife, a surprise jump in a bill? How many of those moments truly deserved your stress, your anger, your headache, your sleepless night, and how many were just mental garbage? Things that, if you had paused, taken a breath, counted to 10, and stared at coldly, you would have seen they had no real power over you, except the power you gave them. You can't live in peace if you react to everything. Just like you can't cross a desert if you stop to pick up every rock along the way. You need to train your numbness with intention, with clarity, with purpose. Not to become rigid, but to protect your softness for what truly matters. Save your heart for what's worthy, for loved ones, for real work, for meaningful action. Let the rest pass. That's not avoidance, that's strength. Because the man who chooses not to react is the man who holds the real power. No one is born with inner peace. Don't mistake the calm ones, the quiet types, the meditative, the stoic, for people who came into the world with something you lack. The truth is, peace isn't some blessing handed out by fate. It's the product of training. Daily training. Training in every small reaction. Training in the mornings when you feel dead inside but still force yourself to get up. Training in those moments when you want to explode but choose silence instead. Training when you're sitting alone in a dark room, sweat dripping, heart racing, head spinning, and still you choose to breathe deep instead of losing it. The mind is like a muscle. Neglect it, it weakens. Use it wrong, it gets injured. Train it right, and it becomes strong, steady, and resilient. Stoicism never treated peace as a feeling. It treated it as a skill. The skill of observing yourself. The skill of mastering your reactions. The skill of asking the right questions. Is this really important? Is this within my control? What happens if I don't react? And the best part? A skill can be learned by anyone. Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter how many times you've lost control. Doesn't matter how chaotic your past has been. What matters is, do you want to start training your mind again? Marcus Aurelius called it inner training. He treated each day like a session. Training to stay calm when insulted. Training to be patient when misunderstood. Training to stay honest when tempted. Training to hold on to reason when the world went insane. And he never called it easy. He described it as a battle. A war within, where the enemy was the most dangerous one of all. Yourself. Now what have you been training your mind with all these years? You've trained reflexes like anger, withdrawal, self-blame, finger-pointing. You've made a habit of giving in every time pressure hits. You've allowed yourself to blow up, shut down, check out, and then you wonder why you're weak, lost, crumbling at every setback. But the truth is, you've been training wrong. You've practiced weakness into a lifestyle. And no, you can't reverse that in a day. But yes, you can change it. Starting now, little by little. One morning at a time, telling yourself, today, I'll take control of just one negative reaction. One argument where you choose silence, not out of fear, but because you refuse to repeat the same old pattern. One anxious episode where instead of spiraling, you write your thoughts down. These small steps, if done consistently, will build an inner life no storm can shake. And one day, you'll see it clearly. Peace didn't come from your circumstances changing. It came from you becoming someone different. Someone who can stand in chaos without being pulled into it. Someone who can hear insults and stay grounded. Someone who can face financial pressure, failure, and loss and still think clearly. That's not idealism. That's the result of training. And you, if you really want it, can start that training today. Living simply has never been a sign of failure, but modern society has tricked you into thinking otherwise. That if you don't own a big house, drive a new car, wear designer clothes, or dine at upscale restaurants, you're somehow below standard. That if you cut back on spending, move into a rental, or sell your car to ride the bus, you've downgraded. They won't say it outright, but they've fed your mind a toxic equation. Simplicity equals losing. But step back and ask yourself, who defined this standard you're chasing? The people selling you a car you don't actually need. The banks collecting interest on the home you can barely afford. The credit card companies profiting off your anxiety. The Instagram influencers living fake lives funded by debt. And you're calling that success? Stoicism exposed this illusion thousands of years ago. The more dependent you are on material comfort, the easier it is for the world to manipulate you. Seneca, a man who was among the wealthiest in Rome with estates, power, and status, still chose simplicity. Not because he was poor, but because he wanted to protect his inner freedom. He needed to know that if it all disappeared tomorrow, he would still stand. Maybe it's time you reconsider your own life. Cutting out what you don't need isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign that you're choosing peace over performance. You don't need a new car every 2 years if the old one still runs. You don't need a bigger house if the one you're in already holds the people you love. You don't need to spend money to impress people you don't respect, especially when it's draining your soul to maintain a lie called success. Simple living isn't just about saving money. It's a mental defense strategy. The less you rely on, the less you fear. The less you fear, the less pressure you carry. And that gives your mind room to focus on what actually matters. Your kids, your partner, your own damn self. You'll realize that happiness doesn't come from how much stuff you own. It comes from how lightly you can move through life without being dragged down by it. And from that space, you'll reclaim something you've likely been losing without noticing: control. When you live within your means, you can choose the work you take, the people you keep close, the time you rest, and no one can dangle a paycheck over your head to force you into betraying your values. That's real freedom, the freedom most high earners don't have, and most rich people can't buy. So if someone tells you you live simply because you can't afford more, just smile. They don't get it, because you're not living less, you're living awake. And if living with that kind of clarity isn't strength, then what the hell is? From an early age, you were programmed to measure your worth in numbers. How much do you make each month? Do you own a house yet? Got a car? How much is left in your savings? Did you pay every bill on time? Is your credit score acceptable? You don't have to say it out loud, but deep down, every time those numbers drop, you feel yourself shrink. Modern society turns everything into data, into metrics, into scorecards. And in the process, you've turned yourself into a hollow replica of those numbers. So much so that if you miss a payment, you don't just feel stressed, you feel ashamed. If your balance dips to a few $100, you don't just feel pressure, you feel worthless. If you have to borrow money, it's not just tough, it feels like you failed as a man. But have you ever stopped to ask, when did I give a spreadsheet the right to decide who I am? When did I start valuing integrity, courage, loyalty, patience, or character based on a damn number in an account? And if you've never dared to ask that question, you'll spend your whole life chasing standards you never even stopped to question whether they were worth a damn. Stoicism never defined a man by his wealth. Epictetus was a slave, broke, beaten, ignored, but he still saw himself as free, because he refused to let anyone or anything outside of him define who he was. Marcus Aurelius was emperor of the most powerful empire on earth, and yet he never saw the throne as his identity. He knew all of it was temporary. The only thing that mattered in the end was whether his mind stayed true to reason, virtue, and duty. You might be unemployed right now. You might be in debt. You might be selling off your stuff just to survive. But if you're still holding on to your integrity, still treating others with decency, still living by the values you believe in, then you are not lesser. You're just in a tough financial season. That's it. It doesn't make you a failure. On the other hand, there are plenty of six-figure earners out there, living in luxury homes with rotting souls, hollow values, and no purpose beyond keeping up appearances. They're not rich, they're just well disguised. Redefining your self-worth is the turning point if you ever want to escape the hell of constant pressure. Because as long as you keep tying your identity to being the man who always has enough, every time you come up short, you'll slaughter your own self-respect. But when you know who you truly are, a father who shows up, a decent husband, a man who owns his responsibilities, then no matter what your bank statement says, you can still walk tall. You weren't born to be a bill-paying machine. You don't exist to maintain a shiny credit score. You are not what you own. You are what you choose to uphold in the face of hardship. And if you're still holding on to character, clarity, and compassion, then congratulations. You are worth more than any number on any screen. You don't need some big breakthrough to change your life. You don't need to win the lottery. You don't need a miracle opportunity. You don't need someone to come save you. What you need is one small action, every single day. The problem is, people don't like this. They crave the dramatic turnaround, the magical turning point, the moment when one door swings open and everything is suddenly different. But real life doesn't work that way. Real life is waking up each morning and choosing what's right, going to bed each night knowing you didn't give in. Real life is made of tiny choices, from someone disciplined enough not to live on autopilot. Stoicism never bet on luck. It bets on consistent, repeated action. Marcus Aurelius wrote his thoughts each night to reflect, to sharpen, to remind himself. Epictetus told his students, "Don't talk about philosophy, live it." Seneca wrote letters to Lucilius, not to show off his wisdom, but to sharpen his own thinking with every sentence. They didn't wait for the perfect day. They acted every day. What about you? How long have you been waiting? Waiting until you have more money to make a change. Waiting until your head's clear to start working out. Waiting until the pressure eases before you live peacefully. But it's that very waiting that's kept you stuck for years. The freedom you're hoping for, it's not in the future. It's right here, right now, in how you choose to behave, think, act today. You can't control life, but you can control your habits. And it's your habits, not your hopes, that shape your fate. Getting up 30 minutes earlier to sit and breathe, that's you laying the foundation for a stronger mind. Cooking a meal instead of ordering out, that's you reclaiming discipline from laziness. Choosing silence over an argument, that's you practicing calm. Deciding not to buy something you don't truly need, that's you breaking the consumer cycle. These actions, small as they seem, are bricks. And brick by brick, you're building a life of self-mastery. And after a few months, a few years, you'll look back and realize you didn't need a hard left turn. You just needed to keep your hands on the wheel. The ones who are truly free are the ones who've built themselves a framework of discipline so solid, no circumstance can knock them off course. Freedom doesn't come from how much money you have. It comes from no longer being led around by your emotions, your cravings, or your environment. Freedom is knowing. Every action you take today is a stitch, pulling your torn life back together, one thread at a time. And if you have the guts to keep doing those small actions, day in, day out, then one day you'll no longer be the guy trying to escape the hell of bills and pressure. You'll be the man who walked through it and came out the other side, unchained. If you've made it this far, maybe it's because you saw yourself in something I just said. Maybe you're living in the middle of the bills, the numbers, the sleepless nights no one knows about. Maybe you're holding it together even while the world thinks you're fine. And if that's the case, let me say this. You are not alone. We, grown men, have been taught to stay silent. Taught to carry it all, bury the fear, protect the image of being strong. But the truth is, no one stays strong forever without being understood. And that's why I made this video. Not to teach you anything, but to walk through it with you. If something in your heart just moved, drop a comment. You don't need to say much, just a line. I feel this. Or I'm there too. Because sometimes, a single sentence like that can save another man who's breaking in silence. If this video might help someone, your brother, your friend, your father, share it. We don't need to talk much. We just need to know. We don't have to walk through the storm alone. You don't have to carry it all anymore. You just have to keep walking. And know this, someone's walking with you. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.